Professor Akhtar, we can't hear you.
Okay, is that better? All right.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right, wonderful. Okay. All right, well, welcome. Thank you all for joining. This is our third year that we're doing the virtual iftar. And the virtual iftar, we started, well, initially, yeah, I guess it's been 3 years now. We started right before the pandemic started. And the idea behind it is that it connects people across the world to learning about sort of the Islamic faith and tradition in a kind of a different way. And so the idea would be to connect people, our scholars at FIU, our students, and particularly to take advantage of the platform of 10 Days of Connection. So the idea is that it started with Radical Partners, and Joanne is here as well to join us and to be part of this. And so the idea behind the 10 Days of Connection is that it brings people across Miami or people that are connected to Miami. So today we have people from China, we have people from India, we have people from all over the world to impart a bit of wisdom about their own tradition and to learn about the Islamic tradition. So this year I mixed it up a bit. And what we're planning on doing is having people from different faith traditions to talk about their understanding of fasting. And so to kind of use fasting as a way of connecting different faith traditions. And these are people from our classes, from the department, from over the years, all the people that we've met, to be able to join interfaith, sort of thinking about interfaith dialogue beyond just the idea of I believe in God, you believe in God. You know, this is a great thing. I mean, they have traditions here that don't necessarily believe in a God per se, but also then practice the same tradition. And so the act of fasting, thinking about what fasting means to us from a religious perspective, we know that fasting is also now quite popular in the secular and academic world, and particularly through medical science that shows the benefits of fasting. But thinking of fasting as a way of slowing the body and slowing the mind. So that's something that's important for us to be able to use that space that fasting allows us to be able to go beyond ourselves, right? What does it mean for us as people who are interested in this tradition of fasting? What does it mean for us physically, spiritually, emotionally? How does it change the way that we go through the world, the way that we connect to others that are important to us? So fasting, I think, is a very important, and clearly it's an ancient ritual that goes back sort of generations, and perhaps to the beginning of humanity. So it's something that's physical, that's visceral, that has spiritual sort of significance, but traditions give it different ways, different significance, different ways of understanding that. And so that's something that I wanted to connect us all together in terms of thinking about what it means in a comparative perspective, and using that comparison to be able to think through what fasting is, and sort of the depth and the breadth of that. So without further ado, it's an honor and a pleasure to turn it over to Miss Fathima Ahamed, who will do a Quranic recitation, a live Quranic recitation, and then a translation into English for those of you who are not familiar with the Arabic language. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Miss Fathima Ahamed.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجان من مارج من نار فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان رب المشرقين ورب المغربين فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يخرج منهما اللؤلؤ والمرجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان وله الجوار المنشآت في البحر كالأعلام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يسأله من في السماوات والأرض كل يوم هو في شأن فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. So chapter 55 of the Quran, Surah Ar-Rahman, the most merciful, verses 1 to 30. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful. The most merciful, he taught the Quran. He created man and he taught him eloquence. The sun and the moon, they move by precise calculation. And the stars and the trees, they prostrate to him. And the heaven, he raised and imposed the balance, that you do not transgress within the balance, and establish weight in justice, and do not make deficient the balance. And the earth he laid out for the creatures. Therein is fruit and palm trees having sheets of dates, and grain having husks and scented plants. So which of the favors of your Lord would you deny? He created man from clay like that of pottery, and he created the jinn from a smokeless flame of fire. So which of the favors of your Lord would you deny? He is the Lord of the two sunrises and the Lord of the two sunsets. So which of the favors of your Lord would you deny? He released the two seas, meeting one another. Between them is a barrier, so neither of them transgresses. So which of the favors of your Lord would you deny? From both of them emerged pearl and coral. So which of the favors of your Lord would you deny? And to him belong the ships with sails, elevated in the sea like mountains. So which of the favors of your Lord would you deny? Everyone upon it, meaning the earth, will perish, and there will remain the face of your Lord, owner of majesty and honor. So which of the favors of your Lord would you deny? Whoever is within the heavens and the earth asks him every day. He is bringing in a new matter. So which of the favors of your Lord would you deny? Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Farah. We really appreciate that. The next person I want to call is a very dear friend and colleague at FIU. He's also the director of the Center for Muslim World Studies. He established the Middle Eastern Studies program at FIU many years ago. Great scholar of Central Asia, of Iran. And beyond his scholarship, he is, I think, if I may say so, a person of great spiritual insight. So he's an elder in our community and someone that I think that in a professor, of course, at FIU. So it's an honor and a pleasure to present Professor Mohiaddin Mesbahi.
Am I on? Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon all of you and Ramadan Mubarak. My name is Mohiaddin Mesbahi. I'm a founding director of the Mohsen and Fawzia Jaffer Center for Muslim World Studies. On behalf of the Jaffer Center, a warm welcome to all of you. My special thanks to Dr. Iqbal Akhtar and Zafrin Jaffrey for organizing this wonderful event via the 10 Days Connection to promote interfaith understanding and also strengthening the civil society connectivity in our community. And my also Ramadan greeting and best wishes to the Jaffer family, whose significant generosity made the inauguration of this unique center in 2018 at FIU possible. One of the main objectives and long-term goal of the Jaffer Center is to foster a better understanding of Muslim and Islamic traditions, not only through improving pedagogy and teaching, offering undergraduate and graduate certificates, objective research, conferences, all of that stuff that we have done and we're doing greatly at FIU, but also to celebrate the rich heritage of Islamic tradition as a platform for community outreach, cultural understanding, and civic peace and friendship. And in this regard, we hope to explore the common heritage and traditions, and particularly their approaches to dealing with the contemporary problems facing humanity in general, and in our country and our community in particular, problems such as hate and violence, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, poverty, discrimination, economic inequality, as well as a serious planetary threat of global environmental degradations and devastation. And today's speakers lineup is a reflection of this intellectual and civic commitment of the Jaffer Center to explore the common traditions of fasting as a celebration of a magnificent tradition and its enduring contemporary relevance. I'm grateful to all the speakers who accepted the invitation to be here with us and to share their reflections. It is hard actually to believe that it's already been more than a year that we have been experiencing such a particularly challenging time. The coronavirus crisis has been unique in several dimensions. They are fundamental that have made the synergy between the university and the community even more urgent and particularly relevant in months such as Ramadan. Never before had the entire humanity been faced with a common threat that's not about war, nuclear confrontation, or terrorism, but it's rather about a health-related threat that does not respect borders, wealth, race, gender, religion, and civilizations, and as such requires a collective response. And I've been asking this question for the last year continuously, that while we seem to be all definitely in a common storm, but are we navigating this storm in the same boat? And regrettably, I would say probably not. The devastation of this crisis physically, emotionally, socially, economically, and even spiritually has been and will continue to be shouldered by the working people, and especially by the most vulnerable and economically pressed around the world. And today, more than a year into this crisis, despite the continuous pleading by the international organizations, personalities, Yeah, even the UN, Antonio Guterres, the UN's General Secretary, has said that the global vaccination campaign represents the greatest moral test of our times. But we have witnessed the wealthy nations have hoarding the vaccines continuously. The crisis actually has highlighted the disparity between the haves and have-nots locally and globally. Yes, there's been some positive development recently by the United States and others in the last few days about the vaccines, patents, etc., that hopefully will continue, but we'll see how that will evolve. The question of justice, community, and compassion continues to pose a serious challenge to our local, national, and global community, but also an opportunity to work and lead together. For many who have experienced Ramadan, this month is a special month, not only religiously and spiritually, but also personally, a month full of warm memories of family and friends. This is true especially for those who are experiencing this particular Ramadan in the absence of their friends and their loved ones. For me, like many of you, Ramadan is imbued with memories of my loving parents, both of whom I lost 6 years ago. In fact, my father, who lived his life in the Ramadan spirit and always anticipated its arrival with passion, passed away 6 years ago yesterday, this week. Today, we think of and remember the many lives that have been lost to COVID and keep them and their loved ones in our prayers. And we long for the days that we can all get together, enjoy the close contact of our dear friends and families, maybe have the same events next year in the FIU's beautiful campus and welcoming campus. So for the end, I leave you with the words of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, from his famous sermons of Sha'ban, where he characterized the month of Ramadan as follows. O people, a month has approached you full of blessing, mercy, and forgiveness. It is a month which God regards as the best of all months. Its days are the best of days. Its nights are the best of nights. And its hours are the best of hours. May God bless all of you and take care of yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mesbahi. I really appreciate that. It's now my pleasure to introduce Carlos Grenier, who is the hire for the Jaffer Center. And Professor Grenier is a scholar of, I guess, like medieval, early modern Ottoman history, and particularly vernacular history from the University of Chicago. So it's an honor and a pleasure to have him in our department. He's the most recent hire, not just for the Jaffer Center, but for the Department of Religious Studies. He knows many different languages, from Arabic and Persian to Turkish, and he's kind of been my partner in crime in terms of working through the university and sort of religious studies program, and we live actually very close together, so we're constantly hanging out. So it's also a pleasure to have such a great scholar and a friend so close by. So Professor Grenier is going to be talking about the tradition of fasting in the Islamic tradition.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. So I only have a few minutes to speak. I really wish I could talk more about this, the meaning and the symbolism of this very interesting month. There's no way I can offer anything remotely approaching an overview of the meaning and history of the month of Ramadan. So instead, I would like to introduce just a couple themes that are constantly attached to Ramadan within the Islamic tradition. One is the theme of scarcity, of introducing scarcity into one's own self, one's own body, and charity and gratitude that's related to it. And secondly, the idea that Ramadan is a time when heaven and earth are brought close together, when the divine and human worlds are joined closely. So before I introduce those themes, I'm just going to quickly, mention the basics of what Ramadan is for those who aren't familiar. The Quran states the requirements of the fast very simply, and it does not give the reader too much in terms of rationale for the fast. It specifies the requirements. Food and drink are to be abstained from every day during the month of Ramadan, beginning from the verse says, when the white thread becomes distinct from the black thread at dawn, about an hour before dawn, and fast continues until night. Later, many rules were extrapolated from these Quranic statements, and many traditions grew out of it, including Iftar, which we're celebrating now, a fast-breaking meal, a suhoor, a pre-dawn meal, itikaf, period of seclusion and prayer, and many other traditions. But to return to my original theme, the fast does not take place during just any month. Rather, the month of Ramadan is a lunar month whose name remains from when it fell only during the summer, before the calendar was changed to a lunar calendar. The letters Ramadan mean heat and burning. This fast during a month associated with intense scorching heat, with the heat of summer, which in the Arabian Peninsula always gave rise to food scarcity and frequent drought, became in a sense a way to institute scarceness and precarity within the body and the mind of the believer. The Ramadan now cycles within the whole solar year. It preserves in its name the harsh climate of the summers of Mecca and Medina, when the wells had run dry and resources had to be shared on peril of thirst and starvation. So it instills this scarcity within us during each of us across the year as we fast. We're reminded deeply and viscerally that food and water are precious resources, and that despite our plumbing and our stocked fridges, nourishment is a precious gift from God. So perhaps for this reason, traditional Ramadan practice places a great emphasis on sharing food and on the collective giving of resources. There's no other time of the year in which charity is emphasized so much as in Ramadan, especially the personal sharing of food and beverages. Several traditions from the Prophet remind us of this. The Prophet was, one of them says, the Prophet was the most generous of people, and he was the most generous during Ramadan. Another says, he who feeds another person shall earn he who feeds a fasting person who helps them break their fast shall earn a reward equivalent to the fasting person without detracting from your own reward. A companion then asked, O Messenger of God, some of us do not have enough resources to break the fast of another. Thereupon the Prophet said, God gives this reward even to those who give a sip of milk to a fasting person. And note that according to Islamic law, the compensation for intentionally breaking one's own fast is to feed 60 needy people. Seen this way, the Ramadan fast is nothing other than a collective remembrance of the scarcity and immense value of our divinely given resources, and a reminder that the appropriate response to scarcity is to share what we have with each other in a spirit of gratitude. I'll now open up the second theme. For this, we must refer to a later chapter of the Quran, the Surat Al-Qadr, which describes the night in which God sent the revelation of the Quran to earth, a night that took place during Ramadan. The chapter says, we have revealed this message in the night of power, and what will explain to thee what the night of power is? The night of power is greater than 1,000 months. Therein came down the angels and the Spirit by God's permission in all of their affairs. Peace until the coming of dawn. This verse shows us something important, that the inner sacrality of Ramadan comes not only from the fasting itself, but from the fact that the month of Ramadan is that in which the Quran was sent down. The night of power bestows upon Ramadan an especially close relationship between the divine and the human. A tradition recounts that the angel Gabriel used to read the Quran with the Prophet every Ramadan. An off-cited tradition of the Prophet says, when Ramadan arrives, the gates of heaven are opened and the gates of hell are closed shut. Here again, we can note that both biblical and Islamic traditions assert that Moses climbed up Mount Sinai to receive the tablets in a time of fasting, a night that incidentally Muslims also believe fell on Ramadan on the 6th of Ramadan. Islamic tradition also insists that Jesus received his teachings on the 13th of Ramadan. Even Abraham's covenant was said to have been enacted on the 3rd of Ramadan, according to some traditions. Muslims insist then on this enduring connection in all Abrahamic traditions between the divine revelation and the sacred month. So to close this, you may ask why I introduced these two themes, scarcity and charity first, and secondly, the closeness of heaven and earth. It is because I feel they are connected. Perhaps, and here I'm only speaking from my own heart, one of the secrets of Ramadan is that gratitude and giving are in fact one of the ways or some of the ways in which the divine world and the human world are brought near each other. Ramadan suggests that the interconnection between the divine and the human world is played out in our own awareness of our resources and the way we share it with others. The gates of heaven that open are in part the gates of our own spiritual goodness and our own gratitude and awareness. So with that, I will end this talk, and thank you for listening. I wish I could have gone into more detail, but we only had a few minutes, so thank you.
Well, we'll definitely have time for question and answer and sort of discussion. I think I'm looking forward to that. So I think my next guest is going to be Dr. Kirsty Jain. I guess I wanted to start with acknowledging also someone. I mean, there are a lot of amazing people that are here, but particularly sort of Dr. Venu Mehta. So she was my first student when I came to FIU many, many years ago, 9 years ago, I believe. Yeah, probably 9 years, almost a decade now. And what kind of really made me very happy about Venu is that she kind of introduced me to the Jain tradition generally, right? And sort of the Jain community and sort of learning about Jainism. I mean, to be honest with you, all I knew about Jainism was that it was when I was a child, I did a world history and world religions course, and it was kind of a footnote that, there were two groups that fought against Brahmanism, and one of them was successful, the Buddhists, and the Jains were not so successful. And that's kind of all I really knew. And I think just sort of learning about Jainism through Venu, and then just being really honored this year to be the director of Jain studies at FIU, and learning about Jainism, going deeper into the tradition, meeting the people within the community, learning about these, the 3 A's, the ahimsa, anekantavad, and aparigraha, right? The nonviolence, the non-possessiveness, and sort of the plurality of viewpoints has been really remarkable. I think it provides a lot of depth, and there's so much within this tradition that's, more than 2,500, 3,000-year-old tradition. So I'm always learning about Jainism, and I really enjoy talking and sort of learning about the tradition. So it's been an honor and a pleasure to get to know Dr. Mehta, and particularly Dr. Kirsty Jain as well, who is a distinguished physician as well, and one of the leaders of the American Jain community, and honestly one of these visionaries that has the understanding of not just the tradition as historical or the religion as ritual, but also thinking about kind of Jainism as something that's applied and that can help improve our lives and our world. And so it's really been great to just connect with them and to work with the Jain. Like Dr. Kirsty Jain to talk to us a little bit about the Jain tradition.
Thank you, Dr. Akhtar. I have a few slides to share, and could you enable screen share, Dr. Akhtar? Can you all see me? I don't think sharing. You may have to make me a host. Not sure.
The Iqbal should give you the share.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can now.
Okay, excellent. So fasting in Jainism, fasting is so central in Jainism that I probably need to spend, out of the 5 minutes given to me, I probably need to spend about a minute on giving you a background about what Jainism is and what is the concept of soul in Jainism? I'll start with Jajanendra. As you all know, and you may have heard this greeting from a Jain time to time, it means honor to the Jinas. A Jain means the follower of Jina. And who is Jina? Jina is the conqueror of inner enemies. The emphasis here is on inner enemies. I'm sorry, this sound, I didn't plan on it, but the inner enemies are anger, greed, ego, and deceit. Where do they come from? Two things. Attachment. Attachment can be to anything, your life, to money, to family, to your house, or anything. Attachment and aversion, reverse of that. Attachment usually causes greed and pride, and aversion often causes anger and deceit. Now, a word about concept of soul in Jainism. First, soul exists, and every living being has a soul. A soul goes through the cycles of birth and rebirth endlessly, and therefore all the sorrows that are associated with that. And that happens because of impurity of the soul. That impurity is caused by karmic particles that attach to the soul as a result of the inner enemies that we just talked about. But this soul has the potential to attain eternal bliss. You can use the word godhood. It has the potential to attain eternal bliss, every soul, without any birth or rebirth. But for that to happen, it has to be purified. And that purification of the soul, that freedom from bondage of these karmic particles happens through the right perception, the rational knowledge, and of course, rational conduct. That achievement of rational perception, rational knowledge, and rational conduct can be achieved through penance, austerity, and meditation. And that's where fasting comes in. Fasting is one of the supreme forms of penance. Therefore, fasting is one of the ways to achieve the ultimate objective of the soul, that is to attain nirvana or moksha, or basically eternal bliss, freedom from the cycles of birth and rebirth. Fasting, according to Jains, purifies body and mind and reminds the practitioner of Lord Mahavira, who was the last of the 24 Tirthankars, emphasis on renunciation and asceticism. Now, it's not important or not sufficient for a Jain simply not to eat. That's not enough. You must also want to stop. You must also want to stop wanting to eat. If you continue to desire the food and you fast, that's pointless. So you shouldn't want to eat. And that is the Jain concept of fasting. Now, there are many types of fast Jains undertake. A complete fast would be giving up food and water completely for a certain period. It may be for a day, it may be for 8 days of this Jain celebration of 8 days called Paryushan. It can be for a month called Mas Khaman. It can be for a year. There have been people who have done it for a year with water, I must say, not without food, but with water. They've been documented. It can be partial fast, eating less than full satiety. Some would say it's harder to eat less than full satiety. And it is suggested, according to Jainism, for health reasons as well as religious reasons, to eat a little less than full satiety, or giving up favorite foods called ras parityag, or limiting number of food items. It can be 1 food item, 2 food items, 3 food items, 4 food items, whatever number. In that case, even salt will be considered an additional food. A spice would be an additional food. So it is generally an item without any spices or condiments to it. There are special kinds of fasts like long fast. Some people would eat one meal every other day for years. I've known myself people who have done it for 15 years in a row. Or there are great fasts, as I just explained to you, up to 1 year. But the most important and the last fast I want to focus on, because there's been a lot of talk about, is called Santhara or Sanlekhna, which is basically fasting unto death. A Jain stops eating, often stops drinking any fluids, and prepares for death. Question has been, is it suicide? In India, by the way, euthanasia and suicide both are considered crime and punishable. The Indian Act 21 guarantees life, but does not guarantee death. Therefore, there have been court challenges to this concept of Jainism, Santhara or Sanlekhna, but Jains don't consider it suicide by any long shot. The decision to undertake Santhara is not taken in any passionate mood of anger, deceit, or any other emotion. The decision is often taken when the body is no longer capable of serving its owner as an instrument of spirituality, or the death is a matter of time, usually a short time, and there is no dispute about it. It is an intention to purify the body, remove all thoughts of physical things from the mind, and the ascetic who undertakes this abandons all desires, dislikes, and concentrates exclusively on the spiritual as the death is approaching. He or she often undertakes it with consent of family and spiritual advisor. Those who undertake Santhara are revered by fellow Jains, and their death is celebrated, not mourned. It is celebrated publicly, and it is seen as the ultimate way to expunge all sins and cleanse the soul of the karmic particles, the particles that are responsible for birth and rebirth, liberating the soul on its way to the blissful eternity. Couple of comments from relatives, and I would finish it. These are the relatives of people who have undertaken Santhara, that is fast unto death. It's a divine call which not everyone is blessed with the opportunity, not even the great holy men. Our entire community is celebrating. When grandmother passes away, we'll celebrate by singing religious song. It will not be a sad moment. The person with a pure soul undertaking does it with an open mind and conscious thought. Everything is known to the people. It is our faith. It is protected by the Constitution. And the last comment, Santhara is an act of rational thinking and courage. Fasting not to die, but fasting as a festival to face death. This is the ultimate fasting in Jainism. Jai, thank you so much.
Jai Jinendra, thank you so much, Dr. Kirti Jain. You can revert the host. Okay.
Yes.
We have two more Indic traditions that we're going to learn from. So the next tradition that we're going to be learning about in terms of fasting is the Hindu tradition. So we have our student, Danish Budram, who's going to be talking to us about fasting in the Hindu tradition.
Good evening, everyone. Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste, the greeting of Hindus, which means I bow, I pay my respects to you. First, I'd like to thank Dr. Akhtar for inviting me and having me participate in this event. I'm very honored to be around such wonderful people, and I'm very excited and glad that we can all come together as one during this most auspicious time of Ramadan for the Muslims and this most great event where all of us can come together and share. So my name is Dinesh Budram, and I am the Pandit or the priest at the Devi Bhawan Mandir in Southwest Miami-Dade. And I'm going to speak to you all about the term fasting in Hinduism. So in Hinduism, we believe that, very similarly to the Jain traditions that we learned earlier from Dr. Jain, that our goal in life is to achieve moksha or to achieve nirvana. Now, what does moksha and nirvana mean? So in the Hindu sense, in the Hindu scriptures, moksha, it comes from two Sanskrit roots, which means moha and shaya. Moha refers to delusions, and shaya means to remove those delusions. And also the word nirvana, it also means nir, means to remove. Vana means to the illusionary power. So what these two terms are they both refer to the supreme goal of the Hindus to remove this illusion, these vices, these things that affect us in our everyday lives. Now, why do we do that? We do that for our supreme goal of emerging with Bhagwanji or God, and we can become self-realized. Now, where does fasting come into play here? So what Hinduism has propagated is to show our devotion in the means of abstaining from things that can, make us fall victim to greed, to jealousy, to pride, or to many of these. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna refers to them as no dwari, as the panchabhutas, the five elements that can lead us down into destruction of Kam, Krodh, Mad, Lobh, and Ahankar, which is anger, jealousy, pride, ego, lust. And by fasting, we learn to abstain from things that we may like, things that we may enjoy, not to punish ourselves, but to create the self-discipline that is necessary for us to reach our spiritual goal of moksha. Now, in Hinduism, there's many terms to describe this. One term is a term known as Vratam, and another term is known as Upavesha. Upavesha comes from the Sanskrit roots Upa and Vesha. Upa meaning to go close, and Vesha meaning to become near. So what are we going to go close to and stay near to? That is to Bhagwanji or God. Vratam means, a similar definition. It means Vrta means that which we enjoy, and Atam means to abstain. Now, when we can learn to control the things that we are eating, the things that we are drinking, we can have a stronger sense of discipline for our bodies so we do not become carried away. In Hinduism, there's a hierarchical system of controlling the senses and controlling the body, to control the mind, to control the intellect. And it is only then when we control the intellect that we can achieve moksha. And, fasting is one of the basic ways of controlling our senses and to control our body. Now, what many people do is during holy and auspicious times in Hinduism, what they do is they don't eat, certain things like, for example, meat or salt or, things that they enjoy or like doing, like to eat. Because what it does is it gives the body a rest and it gets the body ready in order to do devotional things. For example, such as doing rituals. and what we refer to as puja, or the stepwise fashion of making offerings to the deities that we're worshiping. So by doing this, we can better focus on our goals of associating ourselves with divinity and with God. So there's also a scientific reasoning for fasting, and is found in Ayurveda, which is Ayur meaning the quote life energy or the life force, Veda meaning the body of knowledge. And what Ayurveda teaches us about fasting is that from eating so many things, for a period of time, for example, a week or a few days, our body begins to use much of its energy, much of its mechanical power to digest the things that we eat. And because of that, our body can become very irritated and very sluggish because of constantly working. So what fasting does is fasting remedies this, because it gives our body a break, and it gives us the ability to purify ourselves from any toxins or any negativities that are in our body. So fasting is something that is done very regularly. Some people fast once a week because each day is associated with a different deity, or they fast during religious periods. For example, at the beginning of in the middle of last month in April, when the holy month of Ramadan was beginning, Hindus were also celebrating Navratri, which are 9 nights devoted to the Divine Mother, and those 9 nights were done in fast. So that is what I'd like to say about fasting in Hinduism. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Danish. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. That was very nice and very interesting to kind of see the similarities. So I think just to continue that theme, I'm going to ask Jason to talk to us a bit about fasting. So Jason is, of course, as you probably can tell, he is a priest in the Japanese Buddhist tradition. And so I'll let him talk to us about fasting in his understanding of Buddhism.
Thank you. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Thank you so much for the invite, for thinking of me and including me in this. I'm very honored to be here on an auspicious occasion. Ramadan Mubarak to everyone who is celebrating, and anybody who else is here in support and solidarity of that. As Dr. Akhtar said, I am a priest in the Shingon tradition, Japanese Buddhist tradition. I am have the honor of being the second Westerner in 1,200 years to be ordained at our temple in Japan, in Okayama. And I'm happy to come and talk a little bit about fasting in the Buddhist traditions. There are, I will probably use the term we a lot, and yet there are vast differences between how Buddhists in all of the different traditions approach fasting or not fasting. And it begins with the historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. And so the Buddha, before his enlightenment, participated in ascetic practices that included extreme fasting. There are stories taught in the Buddhist canon that he survived only on a grain of rice or a sesame seed, or that while meditating, he only ate anything that was deposited in his lap, that would blow into his lap as he was meditating. And to talk about fasting in the Buddhist traditions, I approach it almost backwards. So it isn't so much that we think of fasting as the process or the practice that is the active part. It is the mindfulness of consumption. So the Buddha basically, as he realized that the middle way, the path to enlightenment, coming from a privileged background, did not lie there. Having tried extreme ascetic practice, did not lie there. So somewhere in the middle way, you would find, you know, the Four Noble Truths, the basis of our faith, the Eightfold Noble Path, and the monastic law basically says that, coming from the Vinyas, which are followed by most monastics, that we don't eat after the noon meal. So this is a more moderate way of eating, and it's a way of removing desire and allowing time to focus on meditation, on sutras, on practice. So rather than specifically stating we do something and it's going to be taken away, the practice is we only eat up to this part so that all of the rest of the time can be dedicated to our practice. So in a way, the food doesn't get in the way. And this connects basically to mindful eating, which, as previously mentioned, connects directly to desire and craving. Eating one meal a day assures that the body uses all of the sustenance that it's given. And there's actually an interesting part in the sutras where the prescription is that you are to eat one bowl of food a day, but it doesn't say how large a bowl. So you will have monks who, depending on how austere they want to be, will vary the size of the bowl that they eat from in order to not break the vow, but also not necessarily to consume less food. In the Theravada tradition, there is to this day a practice of alms gathering, where monastics will walk the local community and with an alms bowl, and then food is placed within the bowl and is then eaten. This serves a few different purposes. One is, and it sounds very, very negative when you say it out loud, is to take away the joy of eating. It's to take away the thrill of taste, or the differentiation of taste. So whatever is put into the bowl is eaten. If the alms rounds are lengthy, you will only eat from what is placed in the bowl by the first 7 houses, traditionally. So the rest of the food is then either shared, brought back to the monastery, given to animals. And this is also an area where a lot of people assume that all Buddhists are vegetarian. So our eating practices are to be mindful and to refrain from harm and killing animals. Most Buddhists will practice vegetarianism, definitely at any temple. If you go to a temple in Japan, in Japanese, the word for temple food with 2 words is sojin ryori, and it refers to the vegetarian food that is served at the temple itself. We will also refrain from eating 5 pungent foods, which are onions, garlic, shallots, leeks, and chives. And in relation to the alms bowls, eating what you are offered, and this would include meat. So if a lay practitioner only has meat to offer, there are some monks who will absolutely eat the meat because it is offered to them, rather than admonishing or denying the person offering the food. In my tradition, there is a practice called danjinki, which is an extended fast. And this takes place over the period of a week leading up to the confirmation and the exam for becoming, in Japanese, the word is ajari. It would be a karya. in Theravadan or Mahayana traditions. So that's the path that I am on currently. So at some point within the next, period of my teaching and instruction, I will be fasting for a period of a week in preparation for that. So with all that being said, it sounds like I'm talking about food more than about fasting. But when we eat, eating only before the noon meal, at the monastery, it's silent. And the running joke is, if you're using your mouth for eating, then your mouth can't be used for talking. So again, it's not taking away, it's not a punishment. It's to focus on the sanctity and the sacredness of every mouthful of food that you are given, and the nourishment that it will provide for all the other hours of the day that can be then devoted to practice. So from a personal standpoint, I kind of do this backwards. I generally eat only one meal a day, and it's generally my evening meal. So just with life, the universe, and everything getting in the way, not living at a monastery where I can participate in scripted meal times, what happens for me is I will drink coffee or water throughout the entire day, go through my entire day, and then in the evening take an evening meal, and then go to sleep, and then get up and do it again the next day. So much like the Jain tradition, much like the Hindu tradition, which obviously we are connected with historically, the emphasis on fasting is to provide that space for mindfulness of practice and devotion, and to utilize food not in a pleasurable or desirable way, but to use it for nutrition and sustenance of the body in order to continue towards the practice of moksha or enlightenment.
Thank you so much, Jason. I appreciate that. And it's very interesting to hear your own personal practice. I think that also gives it some depth in terms of thinking about it, not just sort of in the general sense, but also applied, at FIU, kind of living in Miami. So thank you so much for that. Appreciate that, Jason. The next speaker is going to be Mariana Montero, who's going to talk to us a bit about fasting in the Christian tradition.
Hi, good evening, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are. It is an honor to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. I would like to share a little bit of the practice of Lent in the Christian religion. So if I may share my screen, yes, I can. That will be wonderful. Perfect. I wanted to give you, for those that don't know, a little bit of the background of what Lent is. So let's see from beginning. Perfect. Can you all see it? Yes? Perfect. Okay, so Lent in the Christian tradition. So what is Lent? Lent in the Christian church is a period of penitential preparation for Easter. In Western churches, it begins on Ash Wednesday, 6.5 weeks before Easter, and provides a 40-day fast. Sundays are excluded, in imitation of Jesus Christ fasting in the desert before he began his public ministry. So this is a time in which Jesus was tempted by the devil 3 times, in which he abandoned all food and all kind of desires. So Lent is pretty much an imitation of that sacrifice, of that penitential work that Jesus Christ did. So you can see here an image of Ash Wednesday. I'll tell you a little bit about it. So Ash Wednesday, that's the day that Lent begins. It's an obligatory day of fasting and abstinence where only 1 full meal and no meat are to be consumed. It became customary for all the faithful to be reminded of the need for penitence by receiving an imposition of ashes on the forehead in the shape of a cross on the first day of Lent, hence the name of Ash Wednesday. In the modern Roman Catholic Church, the ashes are obtained by burning the palms using the previous Palm Sunday Mass and are applied in the shape of a cross on the forehead of each worshiper on Ash Wednesday. Ash Wednesday is one of the most attended masses in the Christian tradition of the year, besides Christmas. So in the early centuries, fasting rules were very strict, as they still are in Eastern churches. 1 meal a day was allowed in the evening, and meat, fish, eggs, and butter were forbidden. The Eastern Church also restricts the use of wine, oil, and dairy products. In the West, these fasting rules have been gradually become very relaxed. The strict law of fasting among Roman Catholics was lessened up during World War II, and only Ash Wednesday and Good Friday are now kept as Lenten fast days. So usually on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday, no meat is to be consumed, but fish is allowed. In South America, when I grew up, usually people eat cod fish. That's the tradition. So, however, the emphasis on penitential practice and almsgiving remains, besides of the food consumption, and many Catholics also observe a meatless fast, which is allowed on Fridays during Lent. In addition, Catholics and other Christians often choose to give up specific pleasures such as sweets, alcohol, or social media during Lent as a way to foster simplicity and self-control. Many use the cravings or desires for these items as a reminder to pray and refocus on the spiritual matters. So the practice of Lent in the Christian church is unlike what we see in other traditions. Is very personal and is very private. So it's mostly about self-control and reflection, and not so much about dietary restrictions. So specifically, you can just do the Wednesday, the Ash Wednesday, and the Friday, not consume the meat and do only fish. But how people take it nowadays, perhaps a more modern approach, they give up more spiritual practice, more spiritual observances. They want to give up perhaps judgment or jealousy, or they do, if they have a desire or something like a craving, right? If they do a lot of sweets or alcohol or something like that, that's what they choose to do. So the idea is to use the cravings as a reminder for praying and self-reflection, in imitation of what Jesus Christ did during those 40 days. So all this is in preparation, and Lent ends not in a very specific day. It depends on when it starts. If depending on the year and depending on the Ash Wednesday, it can be 40 days or 46 days, depending on how you count. It's not on a specific date. It usually ends, it can be ending the Monday or the Thursday before Easter Sunday. So on Easter Sunday, when Christians celebrate the resurrection of Christ, it's when the Christian tradition ends the Lent. So this is a very important time in the Christian tradition. It's the time where a lot of people who perhaps stray away from the church or the practice throughout the year, that's when they come back. That's when they come back and they said, okay, why do I give up for Lent? There's something that has to be very meaningful, right? Besides, you can say like, okay, I'm gonna give away, I'm gonna give up chocolate, coffee, and perhaps social media, or I promise I'm not gonna judge people for 40 days, right? Something like that. What's most important is the effort. It's the effort, and like I said, it's very private and it's very personal for the Christian community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mariana. Sorry about that. So I think, we started off with the kind of the larger frame is the Islamic tradition, and we've gone into Christianity, which is the Abrahamic faith, and now we're going to, I guess, the oldest Abrahamic faith, which would be Judaism. We'll have Ohad Fedida will talk to us a bit about fasting in the Jewish tradition.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Ohad Fedida. I'm a psychology student here at FIU. I apologize that I was late. I was just observing the Sabbath and I just jumped in a few minutes ago. So I wanted to thank FIU and the organizers for this amazing initiative, and specifically Dr. Akhtar for the opportunity. It's a very big honor, so thank you very much. So Jews are not strangers to fasting. Now, maybe it's not like Ramadan, it's not 30 days in a row, but we do fast in the Jewish tradition. We do fast in the Jewish tradition, and we find three. There's the biblical command at first for Yom Kippur. That's the biblical commandment. When I say biblical command, I mean that it is rooted in the verses themselves. We then have another biblical command, and that is the command to call out and to cry out whenever there is tragedy or challenge that we are going through. That is translated, that biblical command is translated as a communal and a national responsibility to institute fast days as response to challenges and struggles. And finally, there are rabbinically instituted fast days, and that's what most of the fast days are. So they're not tethered to the verses, but rather they are tethered to the authority of the rabbinic, of the rabbinate. So that's most of the fast days that we have today. So practically a Jew today fasts about 7 to 8 times during the calendar year. So there's the biblical command of Yom Kippur, of the Day of Atonement, to fast. There's the biblical command to respond to tragedy through fasting. And then there's the rabbinically instituted fast days. So that's the what. But what is the purpose of fast days in the Jewish tradition? So what is the purpose? So to start with what it's not, Judaism does not view fasting as mechanics of stripping the physical. We do not view fasting as a way to make us more spiritual through removing the physical. Judaism as a tradition speaks to mankind. So man being comprised of both the physical and the spiritual. So rather than trying to get rid of the physical, it elevates the physical. So fasting is not a mechanic of stripping the physical. So now granted, by the way, there are elements of abstinence on the path to self-perfection, but that's more of an assault on overindulgence more than an assault on the physical. So if it's not to get rid of the physical, then what is the purpose? So I think it's important to see one line from Maimonides. Maimonides was one of the greatest sages, thinkers, philosophers in the Jewish tradition. He lived about 850 years ago. So I'll just share my screen. So he has this one line in his magnum opus, the Mishneh Torah, where he codifies all of the legal principles of Judaism. And he says, regarding fasts, there are days when all of Israel fasts due to the tragedies that occurred on them in order to wake the hearts and open the avenues of return. And it should make us aware of our current bad actions and the actions of our forefathers which caused our struggles. And with this awareness, we shall return to the good. So what Maimonides is identifying, and really this is the view of fasting, is that more than trying to get rid of the physical, fasting is there as a mechanic of awareness. It is there to wake us up, as a wake-up call, to wake us up back to the good. Now, it doesn't take a big, religious scholar or a big sociologist, a big psychologist to recognize that when you take away someone's lunch, he's thinking about why he's not having lunch. When we don't have our sandwich, we're thinking why we're not having our sandwich. So the removal of food is a wake-up call. It's a little bit of a nudge that say, hey man, wake up, put down your sandwich for more than 5 seconds and focus about the things that are going on in your life. That's what fasting is for the Jewish tradition. It's an alarm clock. It's a wake-up call to strive for awareness, to bring back consciousness onto our lives. And that idea is really tethered to the principle, to the fundamental idea of what is the purpose of life in the purpose of creation, in the Jewish view. And the purpose of creation in the Jewish view is for there to be a real relationship, a loving relationship between created and creator, between mankind and between reality itself. But for there to be a true relationship that's not based off of self-projection, off of fanciful thinking. Awareness, consciousness, responsiveness must be present. And that's really the purpose of fasts, to wake us up, to bring us back to awareness, to foster in us consciousness so we can actually have a true and loving relationship with reality itself. So to recap, in the Jewish tradition, there is the biblical mandate of Yom Kippur. There's the biblical command of responding to reality with fasts, with tragedy, with fasts. There is the rabbinic instituted fast days. We saw that fast days are a wake-up call and they foster awareness. And the purpose of that is to come into a true relationship with reality itself. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Ahad. That was very interesting. Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of connections and also differences among the Abrahamic traditions. So that was really well done and very succinct. So that I appreciate that. The last presenter, before we get into our discussion and dialogue and kind of the point of the 10 days of connection, is going to be Philippe, who is actually here in New Orleans. I'm actually in Slidell right now, so I'm pretty close by. Hopefully we can meet up soon. So Philippe is going to talk to us. He's a scholar of indigenous traditions, new religion, and he's going to talk to us about fasting as understood from the perspective of religions and sort of in the Caribbean, Afro-Caribbean religions and sort of other traditions that maybe don't get caught within the larger framework of the world religions paradigm.
Thank you, Professor Akhtar. It's an honor to have been invited and to be with you all. Salam and greetings. I'm happy to share a little bit of Ramadan with you. My father was Lebanese. That's why I have a Lebanese last name. But he moved to Haiti at a very early age. And so I was raised in Haiti. And I was raised loosely Christian. But so I represent unlike all of the other speakers, I don't represent any tradition at all. Personally, I'm interested in comparative mysticism, in what's been called the perennial philosophy, and also heretics, people who have been called heretics for whatever reason. And my interest is to explore why is it that they were called heretics. But since I was born in Haiti and I was raised in Haiti, even though I don't represent an indigenous tradition, I can say a few words about the indigenous religion of Haiti, which is Voodoo. I sort of scrambled these notes. I'm not an expert in the field, but when I was asked to participate, I thought, well, I said, I'm sorry, but I really don't remember fasting in Haiti at all. Fish on Fridays, but with a table full of food and dessert and nothing missing except we ate fish. So then I thought about it, and then I realized that, in fact, I asked a few people, and in Voodoo, there is no fasting. And so this led to the question, well, all of the religions, as almost all of them, practice some form of fasting or restraint. Why is it that, there's none of this in Voodoo? And in fact, I'm glad that people spoke before me, because I think it has to do, this is just a hypothesis, this has to do with scarcity. Haiti, the people in Haiti are in constant, can view them as constantly fasting because of scarcity. Almost nobody goes with a full meal, or nobody has 3 meals a day. And when people are full, when they have, they're completely full and satiated, that happens during the religious festivals, during the Voodoo festivals. There's a huge emphasis put on food, and you have to feed the gods. There's a concern about feeding the gods, and a bunch of food is like a buffet is placed in front of the gods. In fact, there's such an obsession with food, and they would never, from what I understand, they would never think about fasting, because fasting is something that happens every day, except on religious holidays. And even then, you have to have the money to afford it. So what Professor Grenier was saying about the relation relationship of scarcity to that month of Ramadan where it was hot and there was less food, I think is an interesting connection. And then also what was said by Professor Jain about the types of fasting, you know, if we consider that not eating at our maximum or normally to be a type of fast, then, you know, Haitians are in a perpetual state of fast. Now, on the positive side, this might sound very sad, but, you know, in fact, Haitians are very happy, and they're, you know, they're rather joyous, happy-go-lucky people, very sharing, very, very giving. I remember, as somebody who was extremely, relative to people in Haiti, extremely well off, finding myself in remote areas of the countryside on a motorcycle, and you know, my wallet had fallen off and I had no money at all. And, you know, people giving me food and water and things like that. And they had nothing compared to obviously someone on a motorcycle. So, you know, the joyousness of the country maybe is due to all of this fasting that goes on constantly. Now, from the point of view of what I know more of, which is comparative mysticism, I just wanted to point out other forms of fasting that occur in mystical groups and what goes by the name alternative religion. And that is, and which is very interesting for academics and people who like to read. One of the fastings that we practiced a lot when I was in these cults and these sects was fasting from talking and from reading. And that can be very difficult, you know, to spend a day or a few days and only expressing the minimum of what you have to communicate in order to do something. You know, whether we're all together in the kitchen cooking or whatever, you know, absolute banishment on gossip, on, oh, you know, what do you do for a living? Or, you know, what are your hobbies? I mean, none of that. So, and the discipline of abstaining from talking and from gossiping and just idle chatter is, I think, something which I learned, which I cherish a lot from time spent in different cults. So I'm going to stop here because, in fact, I'm not at all an expert on indigenous religions, but anyway, I'm glad to have shared with you.
Thank you so much, Philippe. No, I really appreciate that. I think before we open it up to discussion, I just wanted to ask our sponsors. Joanne is here, Luisiana is here. Do you guys want to say anything before we open up our discussion? So we really thank you again for including us in the 10 days of connection, and it's an honor and a privilege to, you know, to be able to bring people together. So
thank you, Iqbal. I honestly don't have a lot of words after listening to all of you great scholars and leaders in each of your religions. So actually the gratefulness and the honor is mine, because it just keeps getting better and better, right? I have to confess that it's not as easy as one would think for someone to lead and host such a thoughtful event, and to bring people with so many different lives and expertise, yet the same amount of respect and passion and love for each other, and most importantly, curiosity for our own traditions and our own worlds. So thank you all. You are really like the what we envision when we talk about the 10 days of connection, and that idea of stepping outside, I wouldn't say only of our comfort zones, but our general zones, and listening to different songs, listening to different ways in which we live, yet so similar. And the intention, right? What's at its core, it's how can we be better as humans, and how can we strengthen our communities and keep tying as we grow and as we travel together, whatever that means in each of our religions or our practices. So thank you all. It is a pleasure to keep learning from you. And maybe by year 5, Iqbal, you will convince me of fasting. For now, I don't have such a strong will. So I respect and admire all of you. So thank you again.
thank you, Joanne. I appreciate that. Thank you for having us as always. Yeah, it's a great collaboration. So I guess we can start if anyone has, if anyone has anything they want to say, it'd be wonderful to hear you. If you have questions for the panelists, or if there's anything you want to say. I mean, I see so many great friends here. If I can just put a shout out, I mean, my student Abdul Razik is here. We have Ashish Jain, who I'm assuming is probably connected to Venu, that's on the call. Professor Aisha is joining us from China, from Ningxia. We have Edward, who is also joining us from China. He spent a year here as well, as part of our the Chinese collaboration that we had with Chinese universities. We have Kent, who is an old friend of mine from the University of Denver, and we did our graduate work together. Just tons of people. Sunita is here, I know, from India. We're working on a Fulbright for her. Venu, great people. Salahuddin is here back. He came as FLTA to teach Arabic at UM, and we connected. And thank God we were able to get him into a PhD program, and he's back at FIU. So that's pretty amazing. So I mean, it's just wonderful to see so many people and such great friends every year. Please, anybody wants to say anything?
It's a wonderful gathering and wonderful thought process. When it started, it was 5:30 morning in India, and it was like a spiritual, what we call in India satsang, you know, the company of holy people. It's a very important concept in all the religions of fasting. Fasting is symbolic, it's sacrificing. And I remember the scholar from Buddhist tradition who talked about, you know, how to give up certain things. And the last speaker who also talked about fasting of speaking, and that is the concept of mauna in Hindu tradition. And it is said that Swami Vivekananda once said that practice meditation in silence and become the dynamo of spirituality. So talking is not always good. And therefore, in Hindu tradition, which is experiential in nature, people go more and more deep in sadhana, what they say, meditation, what we call. And my own research and reading of major religions of the world, Holy Quran, Holy Bible, Holy Guru Granth Sahib, Acharanga, and all the scriptures suggested that meditation is common in all. I remember the opening address where the professor very beautifully said, gratitude, charity, and compassion. That is the need of the hour. Such interfaith discussions should bring out, and I'm sure this is an effort in that direction, the essence of all the philosophical foundations of different faith traditions. And how can we build a better tomorrow? How can we build a better tomorrow, whether it is in educational setup, whether it is in corporate, whether it is in society? We have to create good human beings. And good human beings can be created by practicing good human values. And good human values are rooted in good spiritual values. So therefore, that understanding of one's own purpose of life, the whole focus of life is very important. I would like to end just saying that indulgence and involvement are the two things which are exclusively discussed in Hindu tradition. Indulgence in senses, involvement in senses and indulgence of mind. If I'm involved in all those senses, that gives me pleasure. My mind is always in that. So how do I take out my mind from that? And I fix up at the bigger goals where I say that, we have to work for the humanity. And that is where it also, even in the Upanishad, it says that through enjoyment and beyond enjoyment. It gives the example of a crab. It says just like a crab who extends his legs and then brings back everything. So we have to test that. And after testing, we have to withdraw. So withdrawal is a very important factor in Hindu tradition, where we have to withdraw our mind from sense involvement in senses. And I remember a few scholars talked about mindfulness, to what extent I'm mindful of what am I doing and what will be the impact of my doing such. And when we say in Jainism, when they talk about violence even at the thought process, it's wrong. So how can we, the fasting in Hinduism is entirely a process of purification of mind and get rid of those 6 enemies, which Adi Shankaracharya talked about, anger, greed, jealousy, and stuff like that. So it says that how can I lead a life which is detached life, dutiful, detached. I'm not clinging anywhere, but I'm doing it with full honesty and sincerity. Not that I'll get back something in return, but because I feel it's my duty and I do it with my full heart. So then duty is towards family, it's towards society, it's towards nation, transnation, it's duty towards humanity. And therefore, it says that, the spiritual guru of Swami Vivekananda, Shri Ramakrishna Paramahansa, and he said that you have serve humanity just like you are serving God. Consider the poor people as the God. See the divinity in them. And that divinity in all, I think it's very important, where we feel that if I'm able to do something for someone, I'm a blessed soul. I'm a blessed soul. God has chosen me for the purpose. And with all humility, we have to do it. So I think it's a very good initiative, and I congratulate Dr. Iqbal Akhtar for initiating such spiritual discourses, which is very important. And I look forward to, it's going to be 10-day long, as I guess. So I'll be participating in all the 10 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sengupta. I see Louisiana and then also Salah, they both have their hand raised. So whoever wants to go.
I can go. Well, thank you so much for hosting this and this experience, and for everyone to share, the different traditions and religions. I learned a lot. One thing that I found interesting, it's the concept of fasting as a personal practice, but also like showing the faith that you have for the traditions, for the religions itself. So I found very interesting the different ways on how the different religions show, how different religions allowed people following the religions to show their faith, right? And in the form of fasting. So I found that super interesting, and I just wanted to thank you for for giving the space and teaching us about the different practices.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us again, Luciana. I appreciate that. Salahuddin.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Ramadan Kareem. So I just want to share with you some ideas about Ramadan from my personal perspective. Of course, Dr. Carlos and Dr. Mesbahi, they talked about many things before. Happy to hear from all the different religions, from Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism. It's great to see you all. So just, for example, the way I grew up, the way I was taught about fasting and about Ramadan is that, first of all, God says so. God says you have to fast. So that's the first thing. So you have to, especially, it's not something that people have like debate about. It's from the 5 pillars of Islam. So it's something that's common. It's like the prayers. It's like going to Mecca for pilgrimage. So it's something that you just take it because God says so. Then, of course, when you start thinking about it, it has a lot of benefits. I mean, the first thing you think about, for me, 2 things. The first one is you think about the hungry people, think about the needy, think about the less fortunate. Of course, not only the Muslim non-fortunate, but every human being who doesn't have, for example, when we fast, we're hungry and we're thirsty, but of course we have a few hours left until we go to our fridge and we have a fridge full of food and we have money in our pockets to buy food and to do stuff, but other people might not have that. Also, we do it for a limited period of time. It's like a month, 29 days, but for some people it's like that the whole time. The other thing I think about is so in Ramadan you control yourself from eating food and drinking water, stuff that I'm doing, for example, for sexual intercourse, things that are legal, things that are normal in every tradition, in every culture. But of course, you stop yourself from that because God says so, and because you teach yourself to control, self-control. So if you do that during the whole month of Ramadan, it makes it easier to stop yourself from doing other stuff that might be illegal outside of Ramadan. So that's something big for me. Also, when I think about it across traditions, of course, this is in the Quran. It says, I'm not sure about the translation, but it means that you have to fast, and fasting was not, you're not the first people to have to fast. So a lot of people before had to fast, as we've seen from all different religions. So of course, there are many health benefits that a lot of experts talk about, a lot of studies about how it helps with your bones, osteoporosis, about your digestive system. So a lot of things about that. The spiritual aspect of it, where you get calm and you start feeling more humble, and you start having more empathy, and you think about people. I mean, you're not thinking only about yourself, you're thinking about others. For example, in Morocco, where I'm from Morocco, people, they say Sidna Ramadan, which means like Mr. Ramadan. So for example, when they talk about someone and you say, what are you going to do in the 15th of April or something? They say, okay, oh no, it's Ramadan, it's Mr. Ramadan, so I'm going to be doing this and that. I'm going to be in family, we're going to be doing this. So there is a lot of respect and love for the month. Of course, some people fast outside of Ramadan, but Ramadan is a pillar, like I said. Another thing, I think, for example, in the Quran, the word for fasting, it reminds me of Mary the Virgin. So there is a chapter in the Quran about Mary the Virgin. So when she was pregnant of Jesus Christ, of course, she was suffering in 2 ways, psychologically and physically. So physically because of labor and because she was pregnant, and also psychologically because people were looking at her and talking to her, how did you get this? How did you get pregnant? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God was trying to, he told her to say, whenever someone asks her, to say, I'm fasting, I'm not going to talk to you. And of course, this always reminds me of that. She was going through a lot, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was trying to make her feel peace and calm. And of course, fasting means also in this way means just not to talk a lot. So I think about all these things. And just to end by there is actually I have a translation of the version of the verse from the Quran. It says, so eat and drink and cool your eye, which means be happy. And if thou do see any man, say I have vowed a fast. And another version, abstinence for the Almighty, most gracious. And this will I enter into not talk with any human being. So to finish, when I was in Ramadan, I mean, I fasted like early on, like when I was in a fourth grade, because I wanted to be like old people. You see, when you're very young, you want to be like old people. So I want to fast, I want to be like everyone else, etc. So with the years, I mean, Ramadan is just a pleasant experience. And reading about it, I think it's endorphins in your brain. So I feel so happy in Ramadan. Although sometimes you get so tired, you get hungry, etc. But I feel so happy. And there is something important I forgot to mention. There are many worships that people do. For example, you give charity, you do this, you do that. All those kind of worships, sometimes people can see you do them. But in Ramadan, in fasting, I mean, I can, for example, I can tell you I'm fasting, but when I go on myself, I can drink some water, I can do whatever I want. There is a very important hadith of the Prophet, it says, every deed of the son of Adam will be multiplied for him between 10 and 700 times for each merit. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, God says, except for fasting, for it is for me and I shall reward for it. So no one can tell how exactly are you if you're fasting for real, but you can only be sure of yourself, and God will be observing and will be seeing what you're doing. So, like I said, there is a joke in when I was working. I'm so happy and I'm laughing, I'm joking with everybody. They say, "We don't think you're fasting. What have you been doing in the kitchen a few minutes ago?" So, and it's always a funny and an interesting experience. And for example, these last 10 days. It's somewhat sad for me, to be honest, because it feels like this opportunity will go. There is a lot of special, of course, in Ramadan for Muslims. We know that the doors of heaven are open and the doors of hell are shut down. The devil is shut down, and you can. So it's a very special opportunity. And when you feel there are only a few days left, you feel somewhat sad. So I hope, I mean, this month is peaceful for everyone. And thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Salahuddin. Dr. Jain, yeah, I think you.
Just a quick comment. I think I just wanted to re-emphasize what Sunita ji so eloquently articulated, that fasting is not, even though we often talk about it in terms of food, but fasting is sort of withdrawal of gratification of any senses, be it food or speech or music or sex or what have you. And the idea behind that is to prevent attachment, because attachment is at the root of many ills, many ills that affect your deepmost sense of soul and is one of those inner enemies. The second comment I wanted to make was, I think this is such a good initiative, and it reaffirms the commonality you see in different faiths and different traditions, that even though we might have slightly different explanation for it, but we all believe more or less on the same things as to how fasting and abstinence helps improve our mental and physical health. So I want to thank you again for this wonderful initiative.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jain. Yeah, absolutely. I know Dr. Aisha, I think she wanted to say something. Oh, you have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Professor. Nice to meet you, everybody here. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity given me to share my idea. And also, I want to thank you, Professor Mohiaddin and Carlos, and you and the free and everyone I'm meeting American again before last year. And thank you everyone for here, listen to your a wonderful speak and dialogue. And as we know, the fasting is a common religion system in different religions. And we learn in here different religion have the first habit. And first, in Islamic is a religion system that is easy for us to follow. and does not mean that it's difficult for others. And as we know, Allah said, it is easy for you, not difficult for you. If you are grateful, why should Allah punish you? And fasting, as I understand, have different meanings. We can practice our patience and break our habit for eating habit in this month, and make up our mind and change our habit. And you know, people still or fearing Allah in public or in secret, but in this months we can fast at home, and we can enjoy and share food with others, poor people and different people. We can come together to speak our life and story and our work. And you know, in China, this is very secret things, and we can use this opportunity at home to close for each other, for Muslims. And as we are women, also we cooking food for family members. But we often work at outside, and it's difficult for us. Wake up early. And we cook some food, but we enjoy it and we love it. And we can use this time to teach our children for the second generation in this family education environment. But in China, if we want to share something and we teach our children Islamic things, we should do this in home. But and this opportunity for us is very important. And in ancient Chinese Taoist health remains, there is also a method similar to fast to regulate our body, to purify our body. We called it 辟谷. They didn't eat something, just drink water and to clear our body. So fast can reduce the body, and it's very beneficial for our health. Thank you so much.
No, thank you
That's
so
all.
much, Professor. So Professor Aisha visited us 2 years ago, and
Yeah.
she came from Ningxia. So she's a scholar, professor of Arabic, and then her husband is also the dean of the college there at the university. So it was really a great honor to have to her, and her daughter was with us as well. So to have us, and hopefully we'll be able to see you guys again soon. I know it's very sad, I have to say, that in the last 3 years, the connections between us in the United States and in China, and particularly academics, have become so bad, unfortunately. We used to have so many scholars that came from China here, and we would go to China, and things have become very, very difficult, unfortunately. So it's wonderful to see you and to see Edward and our Chinese colleagues to be able to join us virtually. And we hope that soon we'll be able to see each other together, you know, in person, and hopefully we can do this 10 days of connection both virtually and in person next year.
Yeah, hope so. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to say anything? What we can do is we can officially also just close out the program. For those of you who need to go, you can go, and those of us who just want to hang out and talk, we can just keep the Zoom open and we can just hang out. Is that okay? All right. So does anybody else want to say anything before I'll turn it over to Dr. Zafreen Jaffrey, who wants to maybe give a few concluding remarks, and then we can officially close out the session of the Interfaith Iftar for this year. Looking for
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Greetings. I'm sorry I had my camera off the entire time. We were cooking, and Iqbal's niece was helping me. She's right here. Mariam, say hi. Mariam, say hi. Say hi. She loves saying hi. She's only 14 months old. So thank you, everybody, for coming. And we were just preparing food today, and we just sent out some food to our neighbors here. And we also have been, Iqbal's mother and brother are out in the community also serving people and hosting meals. So that's why you didn't see all of us today, but thank you so much for coming. We love having you guys, especially our friends who've joined from overseas, as well as our friends in Miami. Shout out, huge shout out, virtual hugs, kisses to all of you. And also to people who joined from different faiths and gave us their perspective on fasting and spirituality. So thank you all for joining. And I heard every single word while I was hanging out with Mariam, and you educated her as well. So loads of love, Eid Mubarak to all of you from different parts of the world. And inshallah, we'll see you again in Miami soon or virtually, and you're always in our hearts.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jaffer. Thank you, Dr. Akhtar. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
It was so great to see you all. Thank you again. So now our program is officially ended. Thank you all to our sponsors again for coming. So we're just hanging out now. Now it's a virtual hangout. Let's see.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
ચલો આપણે નીકળી જઈએ હવે આમાંથી.
Thank you.
Thank you.
ચોંટી ગયું છે.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. And Sumita, I think what we'll do is I'll go through and give you feedback on Monday.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Great. Edward, do we see you? Oh.
Hi, assalamu alaikum.
Faisal, how are you doing?
Good to see you.
Well, I'm doing well. Good to see you too.
So what have you been up to?
Well, you know, now is the daytime here and I'm still fasting. It is not very easy for me this month because I live outside alone. I rent a house outside the campus. You know, the convenience of eating before the sunset. But luckily for me that there is a Muslim restaurant right downstairs of my apartment. So the Muslims there, they also fast and we eat together every day. They also show their generosity. They offer me the 2 meals every day for free.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes, that's amazing. But you know, because I'm still working on my thesis this year, and there's a lot to do for me. Basically, this month I stay up every night because you know the time here for us to fast is a little bit earlier in the morning. Basically, we have to finish eating everything before 3:30 a.m.
Wow.
So you know it's quite early, so we have to you know there's less time for me to sleep during the nighttime, and usually I sleep in the morning, but today I woke up very early. I set an alarm, you know, for this meeting, and it's really nice to see you all. I gotta say I really miss you. You know, my time in Miami is the time for me you know, worth me cherishing all my life.
We miss you guys so much too.
I miss you guys too. Yeah.
I think the solution for you, Edward, is to go Oman, which is 1 meal a day. Why should you eat twice? You should just eat one time. That's the real fasting, you know.
Yeah, that is good, but you know, as prophet said, there's how to say I don't know how to say that in English, but the prophet encouraged people to eat before sunset and said there's a barakat in the meal, you know, before
just to break it, yeah, but you know, you don't have to overeat, so don't worry about it.
How is Chow doing?
Well, I guess he's doing well. We call each other from time to time, and I don't know why he didn't came today. Probably he's also sleeping, you know, during the daytime because he also needs to wake up early in the morning. And I texted him right before this meeting starts, but he didn't reply. I guess he's still sleeping.
Okay.
How's the situation with the COVID now? What is this? Any change?
Well, I think for all the individuals in China, we are right now living, you know, as if there's no pandemic at all, because our life has been back to normal ever since, I believe, ever since last year. So for the past 1 year, we were actually living in a normal state. Everything's back to normal. All the stores are open, and
you know what's the funny story is that story has been never told here. Nobody talks about that.
Nobody knows what's going on in China.
Nobody talks about it. Everybody talks about other things, but nobody talks about normal life in China. It's amazing how this incredible free media is so shut down on that story. And incredible.
Yeah. Well, but you know what? I gotta say, China really did a great job in controlling this pandemic. We really don't have any local cases, confirmed cases, like the community, the community spread. No community spread here. So, but there are some imported cases, but we isolated those people, you know, after they get off the plane. So they were living in an individual hotel so that they will not spread the virus to the local community. And people here, well, we are also required to wear a mask if we go to any public place, like if you go to the cinema, you go to the shopping mall, or you go to hospitals, we are still required to wear masks. But we all know that we don't have local confirmed cases, so people are afraid to go anywhere, and we don't have so many like restrictions. I think people are getting their life back. But I know that recently in India, people are experiencing a tough time. You know, there's a spike in India. And I think, so what Ramadan has taught us is that actually all the human in this world is a united one. I mean, it's, you know, it's like a community with a shared future. Everybody is connected. All the different groups, all the people from different country, we are connected. Like the you know, the coronavirus situation right now in India also raised some red flags for the rest of the world, because the world are so connected with each other.
Maybe that's a, you know, it's one of those ironies of life that such a so-called obvious fact is not being felt at all. Not there. You know, I think that's what we should think about as intellectuals. Why not? Why something which is so obvious, but it is not? I think that's an incredible story itself. It doesn't lend itself to rationality. It doesn't lend itself to any even self-preservation as a concept. Think about that people are not even interested in, you know, look at the Western culture, look at the American culture, which just cherish life so much, so selfish about life, but so freely giving it away at the same time. And that's an amazing story, and nobody has any discussions on that. You know, why so cultures that are supposed to be so rational or so selfish or so careless about life, their own life, not anybody else's life. And the political systems have been part of that argument too. In India, with Trump America, even in European countries. So there is, I would say, a malaise, mental malaise going on, and nobody has any sort of have a tempo on that. You know, I've been thinking about that a lot, actually. And that's why the story of China has not been talked about. not just because geopolitical jealousy, but also they can't relate to that. That how 1.7 billion people kind of managed to sort of prevent this disaster in a significant fashion. I'm not saying it's completely perfect, but from Northern European countries to the Western world and into China, to India and all that, this continuous playing ground of death in Iran, in the Arab world, same story. As if life, I mean, think about it. 600,000 Americans are dead. That's, Americans lost about 311,000 in World War II, entire World War II.
Wow.
Okay, so that's how many times of 9/11? And it's as if nothing happening. And no even political cost about it. It's not that much because we became that close to re-elect the same president, you know, and it was just pure accident. It didn't happen. It was just this shenanigans on the 6th of January, not the fact that they handled the American people's security. And nobody cares, and 50% of the population still believes the same thing. I think that's what people should think about. Why is that? I don't think anybody does it. Anybody has good explanation for that. But I think that's where it shows that, you know, we are in a profound mental crisis globally.